should withdraw on the floor. Do you need anything else?
I think I have everything else.
Do you have the script?
Oh, probably not.
Join us. Don Marie, if you tell me where it lives, I can just print one out.
Check in
Normally I
CPC,
just do roll call and she reads it.
I know. Do you have,
CPC meetings. The last one was what, 10/28?
okay.
So Nate, you're here, right?
I sure am.
Okay, just making sure we have 5. Because Liz, you can vote now, right? Yes. So Christine,
Yes, sir.
I hear you talk with Christine.
Yes, I did.
Okay.
And I already have her application, and she'll be part of the interview process next week.
Okay,
I'm
No.
having an interview with, there's 2 or 3 candidates for open space. And our new selectman will be attending as well.
okay. Well, if you,
Hogan will, is the appointments director now.
yeah, and I talk with him all the time. He's right on top of it. So if you appoint somebody, I will make him act on it right away. He will do it.
Yeah.
So,
Thank you.
I don't know how to get it.
unplug it.
I can't. It's already turned off.
All right. All right, so it's, as long as everybody can hear me, it's 3:04, so I am going to open the meeting. I am Gary Ellis, Chairman of the Community Preservation Committee, and I will begin by taking the roll call vote for quorum. So Gary Ellis here, Paul Higgins.
Here.
Tom Kelly is not here. Christine,
Here,
George,
Here.
Nate,
Here.
and Marianne is not here. So if you want to go ahead and read the script, I think Karen's going to do it, correct, Karen?
Gary, I'm present too.
Oh, yeah, I forgot. They didn't put you on my list, although I'm looking at you. So Liz
you.
Hartsgrove, present.
you forgot Liz.
So we have a quorum. Karen?
Okay. As a precautionary measure to reduce the spread of coronavirus, town buildings are closed to the public, and the November 4, 2020 Community Preservation Committee meeting, will be held by remote participation. My name is Karen Green. I'm the Director of Community Development for the town of Yarmouth and will be serving as moderator for this virtual meeting. And Don Marie Flett will also be serving as moderator. Although no in-person attendance will be permitted, every effort will be made to ensure that the public can adequately access and participate in the proceedings. Persons who would like to view or listen to this meeting while in progress may do so by watching via this virtual meeting or dialing into the number provided on the notice of meeting. We will also post a recording of this meeting on the town website as soon as we are able. Please be patient as we work to overcome any technological changes with the virtual meeting. Reduce confusion during the meeting. All audience participants of the virtual meeting enter the meeting muted. Participants will be unmuted when called upon to speak by the chair or moderator. If you are not speaking, please mute yourself to avoid unnecessary background noise. All votes must be roll call votes. After a motion is made and there is a second, the chair will ask for a roll call vote. Comments or questions from the public will be taken at the discretion of the chair. Members of the public may speak by selecting the raise hand button and waiting for the chair to call on them to speak. If you are dialed in to the phone number provided, you can press *9 on the phone to indicate that you would like to comment. Members of the public recognized by the chair are asked to identify themselves by first and last name and affiliation for the record, and then to provide their comment each time they speak. I will now hand the meeting back to the chair.
Okay, I'll go ahead and start going to our agenda. I guess the first item we have is our budget update. So are you doing that, Karen, or Don?
Don Marie's got it, but there
I got
isn't
it.
much.
There really aren't any changes to the budget as yet. They're going to come obviously after town meeting when things get appropriated. So we're status quo with the budget update.
Okay. So Jeff's here, right? Jeff Colby?
I saw him.
Yep, he's here. Hey, Jeff.
Yes, I'm here. Hello.
So I guess we have 3 items on the agenda. I guess you and Karen have all 3 of them. So there were a number of questions I wanted to ask. Don, were the questions that came from George and Paul, did Jeff see them?
They were, forwarded to Karen and Jeff.
Okay.
We received those just yesterday, Gary.
Yep, I saw them and they were relevant to me. I kind of had the same questions. So I guess we'll start first with the Baxter gristmill. Jeff, if you just want to, we have your application. We've all looked at it.
Okay.
If you want to just do a brief explanation of the project, and then we can address, there were a couple of questions relating to that. So
If I
Certainly.
can jump in, Jeff and the committee, I have, I can share my screen if you like to any part of the application, any and all applications. And Jeff, I also have the photographs in kind of a better form than what went into the application.
Okay, great. I do think the photographs are very telling. They show significantly what we're looking for. Some of it can't be photographed because it involves the sill of the building, but just in very brief summary, at the completion of the exterior work at the Baxter gristmill, which that is complete now, we were reattaching a door, and the facilities crew that was doing that just had no place to attach the hinges to, and started to pull some trim off to figure out what was going on. And it was pretty clear that a lot of the supporting structure behind the door was deteriorated. So we called in a structural engineer to come help us assess the situation. It was determined that a good portion, probably 2/3 of the carrying beam above the door that is in the first floor, so it's on the left side of the building as you're looking at it from the street, is severely decayed. In fact, in some cases, at least a 90% loss of the beam. And some of those pictures are in the application. But under further investigation, was also determined that much of the sill on that side of the building is also severely decayed as well. The good news is there's other portions of the structure that are in good shape, but at least that portion on the west side of the building needs to be properly shored up and repaired. There are some temporary supports that were placed in there at the recommendation of the structural engineer in order just to make sure that the building is not going to risk collapse. So it is shored up, at least on a temporary point now, but that shoring means that there's floor to ceiling boards in place to kind of hold things together. So it does need to be repaired. We've got a proposal for investigation and some scoping work from Coastal Engineering, and also Andy Schrake is also willing to pull some portions of the sheathing and siding away so that some of the scope can be determined as far as what's needed. So we have proposals from both of them. Those are being funded through community development and DPW. So there is some in-kind costs that are being borne, but the overall repair, right now we have a placeholder in the application for $75,000. We think that's a very conservative number, but there is work that needs to be done that we're asking for the committee's support on. So that's the overall repair needs, and I'm happy to answer any questions on that project.
Okay, I think, Paul, I think you had a question. I think it would have the
Well,
same.
yeah, I had a question more about the Bray Farm, but it's a similar one. I know on page 4 of the application, and maybe it's just premature or something, it doesn't seem to be detailed in terms of what the $75,000 will pay for. I know that reading it over to DPW, I guess, is going to do the work.
The DPW is not going to do the work. This is going to be done by a separate contractor, potentially Andy Shrake and his crew, or another contractor if we have to solicit quotes based upon the cost. It's likely we'll have to, because it is above $10,000 worth of effort that's needed out there. But this is not something that our crews are comfortable handling. Our facilities team only has 2 people at this point anyway.
Well, I guess that's part of the thing. It wasn't clear in the application. It seems like there were portions that were, I don't know, not filled out or whatever, and I don't know if that's a problem or what. But thinking about justifying the $75,000 expenditure to the town at town meeting, wouldn't you have to have more detailed information regarding what the $75,000 is going to pay for? I know it's a lot of work. It seems like from the pictures and all, but where does the number come from?
Okay, so I can be clearer, and then Karen, you can jump in to supplement. But we have funded coastal engineering to do some further scoping, as well as Andy Shrake and his crew to be the hands to help remove some of the sheathing and some of the siding in order to be able to better see and visualize.
Yeah.
So that's already funded. That's not in the $75,000. That's funded
Okay.
with town building funds. The reason there's a very broad $75,000 number in there is because we don't know what the scope of that work is going to entail. We know that we've seen and obviously seen some very deteriorated members, but how much of that sill plate needs to be replaced, what needs to be done in order to support the structure while that sill plate gets replaced, how much of the carrying beam needs to be removed if they start to remove some of the shingled siding to determine what the scope of that is, and determine that there's some siding that needs to be replaced. That also needs to be incorporated in that cost. So I don't think there's any way to know an exact number until we do that scoping work that'll be done in the next couple of weeks. So we knew that the deadline was approaching for CPA applications, so we decided to get something in, but it does need to have some detail provided to it once we do the scoping. Karen, is that, you want to add anything to that?
I just tag along that, this application came together pretty quickly. That's obvious. But the issue presented itself pretty quickly. And we were unaware of the issue until very recently. And as Jeff was just saying, it was the timing. We'll get more information in the near future. We're happy to keep the committee apprised of all of it. We'll work. George, we got your questions as well regarding timing. And we're happy to answer those questions and provide the committee more of a timeline associated with all the different steps and how the Historic Commission will absolutely be involved. But I think that we will absolutely have a better feel for a number, Paul, in time for the town meeting warrant. Do you think that's safe to say?
Yeah,
Okay.
absolutely. We should have a better idea on the number, early in the new year.
Okay,
Thank
Paul,
you.
then Christine. Paul,
No, I'm done.
you're all
Thank you.
done? Okay,
Yeah.
Christine?
The title of the project has the word repair in it. Repair would denote maintenance, which of course would never be included. I think that should be changed to restoration project.
Good point.
It's
Or
certainly
rehabilitation, perhaps.
right.
Okay.
Comment. Thank you, Christine.
I
then
don't
you're
see it,
welcome.
I
Yeah.
don't see it as maintenance, but I think it could be worded better. I totally agree.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
Also,
we want to be
uh,
careful with that, so.
I don't know who's going to be doing the work, but George Davis has two guys that specialize in old building restoration. I had an occasion at the Bangs Hallett House with the
I-
outside corner.
Without going too far down there, I think Jeff's absolutely right. It's gonna go over the $10,000 threshold and it's gonna have to go out to bid, I believe.
Yeah.
It's gonna have to, correct, Jeff?
Yeah, there's definitely some procurement steps that we need to take on. We don't know whether it's going to be a quote requirement or whether it'll exceed the threshold and have to be a formal bid.
Yeah,
It gets advertised differently, but there's different procurement thresholds that this is certain to trigger.
I would reach out to them to bid on the project because these two guys were excellent. It was $10,000 just for the one corner beam and the sill. So, and these old buildings, when those beams go, to support the building while they're repairing it is an expensive deal.
Right.
So do we know if the deterioration of those beams had to do with any of those, I forget what you call those, beetles that get into beams and eat them, and you have to go in and treat them to get rid of them. So has that been looked into?
Well, that's something that might be able to be determined a little better once they start to remove some of the siding and look at all of the surfaces of the members that are compromised. At least what we could see looked like it was water damage for the most part. There were areas that maybe weren't flashed properly, such as above the door and maybe in association with the sill. There was also some regrading that was done as part of the exterior improvements at Bax Gristmill just recently that lowered the grade slightly so you wouldn't have as much dirt piled up against that sill area. And so there has been some recent improvements, but certainly that structure's been there for a long time, and water has not been kind to it in some areas.
Yeah, well, I just think it should be tested for those beetles at some point, because we don't want to put any money into that. If they bore inside the beams and they become inactive, but they can come back. So I think you should have that tested for those.
Okay, we'll certainly look into that.
Happens all the time with old buildings where they have these beams in, and I've dealt with them. They're very difficult to get rid of if they're in there. And I think, by the way, Andy Schrake would be totally familiar with that. And he really can't test for it, but he'd be able to, when he's taking it apart, see if there's any evidence of them, because he's seen them. I know he has. So.
Okay, great.
Okay, anybody? I have a couple more questions, but anybody else? George?
Hi, Jeff, I'm just curious, any indication from the interior that the punkiness of the wood, went all the way through to the inside?
They did some testing, probing of the beams from the inside, what they could reach. And that's where it was determined that, roughly 2/3 of the carrying beam was compromised because of exactly what you're talking about when you do the probing. There is some solid sections, but it looks like the whole beam would need to be replaced as part of this effort.
Thank you.
Okay, anybody else with any questions? I have two. The siding. Do you anticipate this? What you're asking for now is totally structural, the way I interpret this, correct? Jeff?
It's structural is the reason for the request, but there will be some components in order just to get to the structure that will need to be removed, such as some of the siding will need to be removed. Once they remove the shingles, those will have to be replaced. So there are some components in order just to replace the structural components. Some other members will need to be replaced, such as, again, the siding or the shingles.
Well, I don't know if it would be part of this, and I guess we can talk about it later, but I would like to see the whole thing reshingled and the windows restored. And these are all cosmetic from the outside, but I don't know if we'd want to do this in another phase or add it to this, what we're doing now. But I saw your application, I consider it. Obviously, you're going to have to take some siding off and you might get into some sheathing.
Right.
But as far as cosmetically restoring it to what it used to look like, that would be residing it, restoring the windows, and probably the roof. And the other part of that, one other part to that, and I saw the question in there, I figured if it came from George or Paul, but about the fence, any plans to get rid of that chain link fence, which you know I hate.
Yeah, all the
Karen.
exterior, well, I can answer the fence question first and then Karen can add to the other pieces, but all the exterior work has been completed that we can do at this time. The only piece of chain link fence that remained is on top of the culvert area. And
Yep.
that's because the posts were embedded into that culvert. We went back and forth a number of times with the design engineer about whether that could be replaced and structurally, would they sign off on doing something differently? And because of the age of the culvert concrete wall, they weren't comfortable with doing anything beyond what we did, which was cut down the elevation on that chain link fence. It was 6 feet, it's now 4 feet. So we brought it down and shrunk it down in size, cut it off as much as we could. But something's necessary there because it, literally protects people from falling into the water. So something's necessary. We tried to do something of that wood fence nature, carrying that around. Right now it stops when it's perpendicular to the chain link fence. We actually want to do it on top of the culvert. But there were some difficulties with regards to what could be done, whether we had the room to do it, because also that culvert head wall is right at the property line. We couldn't put anything into the state layout without a state permit. So there's some real complications with doing anything beyond what we did do. Certainly in the future, we'd like to see that go away, but that might have to be part of a bigger project where Mass DOT is planning to do some road work there, adding a sidewalk and doing some protection, maybe some kind of wood guardrail, something like that. Probably part of a bigger project though.
Where you can actually do like a wood split rail, old looking fence. And they do it all the time over in the historic district. And then they put the black wire on the back side of it.
I'm sure something can be done in the future.
Well, as long as it's part of the plan, I think it should be. Maybe not this phase. And I understand your problem with the culvert, but I'd like to, eventually see it go away. Karen?
No, I was just going to say the chain link fence that is there now, Jeff, correct me if I'm wrong, but is it a lower profile than was there before, and it's newer black coated chain link?
Yeah, that's correct. It went from the 6 feet down to 4, and they replaced the matting itself. It's the same posts, but the chain link itself is new coated, so it's not as deteriorated as the old stuff was.
It definitely looks better, but I'm with you with the split rail fence someday.
Well, you can put like I said, you can put black chain link on the backside of a split rail. I can show you a number of places where it's done over in Barnstable.
Great.
And maybe that's part of another project down, which brings me to my question. Maybe this, if anybody asked, I think this should be phase 1, but there may be another phase to this project. And then the last thing I just want to say, so everybody knows I'm aware of it, but as far as matching funds, I know Dickie and his helper put a lot of work into doing some beams in there already that were replaced, and he did a good job with that did not come from us. And the sign was done. I don't think we paid for the CPA didn't pay for the sign, right, Kevin? Which looks great. So I think that should be part of the matching funds. If you could put some estimate as to what you've already done with town people.
Yeah, they did it basically the far corner from the side that we're talking about, but you're right, there was some town effort there.
He did a lot of work there. I know he handpicked out the beam and he did a great job with it. Liz, you have a question?
Thank you. Jeff, can you elaborate? I'm not familiar with the past involvement with CPC. So can you elaborate if CPC has already granted funds for any particular part of restoration of this property?
Yeah, CPC just granted significant funds for the renovation of the property itself, not really much associated with the building. There was some need to pull off of the stairs and replace the stairs as part of the exterior improvements. But the previous improvements, which have just recently been completed, were primarily the fish ladder, the spillway improvement, and some dam enhancements. You really can't see the dam enhancements. A lot of those are below grade, but that does stabilize the site significantly.
Yeah, it was a major project, and I believe, if I'm not mistaken, we put $1 million into it, correct?
At least.
$1.2 million, wasn't
There
it?
was $1.1 million.
Okay. And then this all related to what Jeff talked about, Liz. Go ahead.
Right, right.
I'm
So-
sorry, it's actually, I just want to clarify, it's actually more than that because I think there were 2 awards. There was an award in, I'm going off the top of my head, but I think it was 2013 and it was a smaller amount, maybe 24 or 40. I can't remember which, or no, it was actually 120. And then the 2017 is 1.1.
Yep. So that's about 1.3 something to date.
Yeah.
Liz?
Yeah, so I'm continuing. So Jeff, this will be a prevailing wage project, correct?
Yes, everything Public Works is prevailing wage, right?
Right, exactly. So if we authorize and grant and the town meeting votes on the $75,000 and it comes under that, Karen, can you confirm that that money goes back to CPC, or should be Jeff asking to put additional things in the application so that way he could maybe consider windows or a new fencing plan or something?
Yeah, I think the answer is either, whichever you prefer, Liz. So usually all our CPA contracts, and we execute contracts, which are really more memorandum of agreements or understandings within the town, are always spending up to the
Yes.
appropriation.
That's
If
how we've always done it, Liz. We pick a figure. Sometimes we even give them more, but we do the up to. So if they don't use the money, it does come back to us. We have to go through town meeting to return it, and we have some coming up this year. But yes, the money doesn't go into the general fund. It comes back to us.
Right, exactly. But I just want to make sure that there's no, if Jeff needs that for other things that he's already identified, then it should be in the application. So there's not these additional steps that he has to come back and he can be more proactive with this. So that's the reason why for my asking. But my last question before all of that ties in, Jeff, you mentioned that Mass DOT was looking at refurbishing or redoing some of that area. Karen, is that possible to get mitigation funds to assist with any types of projects in that area for visitor enhancements or anything that we've mentioned already?
mitigation from DOT.
From the Mass DOT for the 28, any types of things?
Yeah, I'd actually, Jeff, I would defer to you on that. I'm not familiar with DOT mitigation.
Yeah, I have to say that I'm not either. The mitigation that I'd be familiar with is if a private developer was doing some work
Right.
and required some upgrade of, public facilities for that. But this is Mass DOT's doing work along Route 28 from the Barnstable Town Line to the Parkers River Bridge, and essentially resurfacing the whole road, replacing sidewalks. There's pretty significant, drainage improvements, some of the intersection improvements as well. Will be part of that. That is scheduled and it's on the Transportation Improvement Program for 2023. So it's not that far off. It really is approaching the 25% design stage. Town staff did participate last year in the road safety audit piece of that project. Certainly we can review the project and add things as needed. So that might be a better way to approach that. So at the 25% design stage, anyone can comment, including CPC or any town staff. We could require certain things at part of that review that we want to see. So things can still be incorporated in the project. I guess is the short answer.
That's great to know. I think that there's an opportunity here that at least to look creatively outside the box to see if there is any way of negotiating and adding some enhancements to this attraction that is right on the area where you're going to be having pedestrians. If there's a sidewalk that's going to be included on this area, I think that we should be able to, negotiate or request Mass DOT funds, Chapter 90 funds, or whatever we can pull out of this besides CPC. I think that is something that at least I would like to see. Thank you.
Good point. Yes. So I'd like to, and I know, Jeff, you feel the 75 is conservative. I guess when you get into old buildings, I'm a little bit leery of that. And what I don't want to do is run short and end up going back to town meeting asking for $20,000 more. So that's my end to my comment. If we're gonna do it up to, maybe we should put a little bit more in there just in case you're taking that apart, you find more. Anybody else, any thoughts on that?
Yeah, yeah,
Paul? Paul?
yeah, I mean, I would agree. The only thing, again, I think I'm being a little obtuse about, you know, the cost estimates on the project. I think the explanation was, and I think I'm also a little bleary from staying up all night watching the election result, but so as you go forward, you're gonna have to put this out to bid, and then that's gonna create more specificity regarding what the work will be and how it will be performed, and that will lead to a more specific substantiation of the cost. Is that correct?
Yeah, absolutely. We'll get a pretty detailed report from Coastal Engineering. They did a good job with the Taylor Bray Farm, which we're going to talk about in a moment with regards to
Same
what's
thing, yeah.
needed, and a pretty lengthy report on that. We'll get the same for Baxter Grist Mill as well from
Okay.
them.
And my final question, I think, is, you know, the ultimate goal of this project is to be able to provide access to the public. So does that mean that people one day will be able to go to that site and go into that building and all that sort of thing, or what?
Karen, do you want to?
Yeah, I'd like to speak to that a little bit and circle back to I think, Gary, it was one of your comments about the phase one, and George, I'd ask you to chime in, please, as the Historic Commission representative. So as we noted, you know, this effort came up kind of abruptly, and we're made aware of the need to fix the building. We've really just finished the dam project and all the site improvements. And I know it was always, you know, in my head, and I think in the Historic Commission's head, to, you know, the next step is to think about the project on a broader scale, and to do more of a master plan just around how we want to use the site and make it more available to the public, make the site more inviting, things like signage, just information, and figuring out how we can go about getting docents to help with the site and all those types of things. So that's definitely something that's coming up. But I think George, and, you know, I don't know what exactly that looks like quite yet.
Hey, George?
And, you know, Karen, you're absolutely right that this is a wonderful opportunity going forward to have a living history demonstration within this structure. So all of the work that was done, you know, with the culvert and with the water flow, you know, the next phase would include looking to get funds to see if we can get the turbine working, you know, to unfreeze that. And it would be very, you know, unique at this part of the Cape. I mean, clearly, you know, down in Booster, they have a working mill up in Sandwich, so we should have one here in Mid Cape. And so that's the plan. Clearly, we're going to keep that on the forefront as we go forward.
Oh, to me, it just gets back to my original question. I think this becomes phase one. And anybody asking, there's going to be other stuff coming up. George, did you want to say?
Just one more point to kind of dovetail, you know, Paul's comment. What's the drop dead date before we will be making a determination on accepting or not accepting the proposal? Is it a month? So that Jeff and Karen know what the timeline is for them to have this, you know, solidified.
Now, the deadline becomes, and Karen can talk about the actual date, is whenever it comes time to put together what's going to go on the spring warrant. So that is in sometime in January, correct?
Gary's correct.
That's the drop dead. If it doesn't go on the warrant, it doesn't go to town meeting.
So it's not 2 weeks from now. I mean,
No.
that's what I
Oh,
wanted
gosh,
to,
no.
No.
clarify so everybody
Okay.
knows,
Like
this is,
it or not, George, it's gonna be Christmas and New Time.
yeah.
We always think we have plenty of time and we don't. So,
Well, this one will work past midnight on Christmas. It's too important not to.
you will.
Okay, I'll be there.
Okay. Anybody else, any questions? When it comes to that, we'll discuss it. I still, at that point, like to entertain a motion with an up to figure. And Jeff, you can talk with Karen about this, but just, I reiterate, make sure that we're pretty confident that 75,000 will cover this phase.
I'll make a
There you-
motion.
Like Liz said, we're not going to vote on it. Now,
I'll make a motion for the up to $75,000 with also the stipulation that if there is any extra money, I would like to have that beetle thing checked like Gary had asked to make sure that it is not an invasive deterioration in the building.
That needs to be in the budget, Jeff, one way or the other. They would be a mistake not to.
Right, okay.
Okay, so Liz, what we do is we go through them all and then we come back as a committee and then we take the motions and that's when we vote on it. We're not going to vote on them today. We're just.
I'm on the record for being in favor with what you said. And
Okay, well, I like that.
Thank you.
Okay. All right, any more questions on Baxter Gristmill? If not, we can move on to Taylor Bray Farm, Jeff, and we can go through it again.
And Jeff, I have new pictures too. I was down at the farm last week. So if you want,
Good news is we have Coastal doing this one too, right?
that's right.
Yeah, we have a contract with Coastal Engineer to develop the plans and bid specifications. That was from funds that were previously approved. That was really just planning and design work. So that's ongoing, and we have a time frame for them to give us that information and have bids available of early next year, or I should say the bid documents available early next year. The plan when it comes to the construction, because we've had a couple of projects recently that have gone over the engineer's estimates or just been some unforeseen issues associated with them. The committee's well aware. Pickleball is a good example of that, where we had to come back for more funds. So we've done two projects recently, the DPW building being one, where we actually went to town meeting with a bid in hand. And so that's kind of the idea behind the premise with Taylor Bray Farms, is to have a bid in hand so we know that exactly what the cost is. And the second project that we're in the process of doing that way is the pump station project for the water division. We are bringing a bid in hand to town meeting for November's town meeting. And although we have a placeholder printed in the warrant of $3 million, the number is going to be significantly less than that because the bids came in very favorably. So that works to our advantage. In fact, if we had the 3 million approved, we would be fine. But there's been a number of times where that's not been the case, where it's been over, because of the need to know exactly and not necessarily go back to town meeting. That's the plan for Taylor Bray Farm. So we have a placeholder that we have in the application. That's probably why there's not as much specificity behind that. But we do expect to have a bid in hand for the work, and that would lead into town meeting. So we do expect it to be around $300,000. We're hopeful that it'll be less, like the last two projects that we've done where we've printed a conservative number and it came in less. So it's good news we can bring to town meeting. We're also hopeful that'll be the case here, but we don't know that for sure. But we do like the approach. So review that approach with the Selectmen and Finance Committee on other things, and that bringing bids to town meeting has been well received. And so we want to do that here as well. It does take a lot more coordination on our effort, on our side. It's not just a number that we move forward and have to, make work one way or another. The additional effort on our side is to make sure the timing of opening the bids is such that we have that number. We try to have that for the final discussions, so that the selectmen, when they write their motions and work up to town meeting, have that well in advance. There's also some procurement challenges associated with that because bids only get held for 30 days. unless the contractor agrees to an extension. So, there's some statutory requirements there that we have to, make the timing work. So there is complications to do it. It's not a simple process, but we have been successful in doing that, bringing bids to town meeting. So there's a much higher level of comfort with the voter that that's the number it's going to be, and it's not going to be significantly different. So that's kind of the idea behind that improvements at Taylor Bray Farm. We have a very detailed report from Coastal currently on what's needed for that facility. And Karen, if you want to show some of the pictures, we do know in that particular case some of the real challenges with that structure.
Bear with me. Hold on.
And so that's just a general kind of overview of kind of the process for this. Happy to answer any questions. Again, we'll know more early in the new year as the plans and bid documents become available.
And we've discussed this for a few years too, and that was anybody who doesn't know, that's how we got to this point. When we discussed it the first time, I felt it foolish to put any money into the building without doing the foundation. And that's where we are now, right, Jeff?
That's correct. And the foundation's work is part of this. Absolutely.
Right.
So these are just some very recent photographs that I took last week on a particularly gray day. But this is the north side of the building. There's where they used to keep the sheep down low. You can see the wind, everything. It's looking pretty ragged. It's a non-technical term, but.
Well, there's also some portions of the building, I think near some of those pictures where, the wall moves much more significantly. Actually, it's the backside, actually.
It is the backside.
That door, the wall moves, that's the door right there, moves a lot more than it should. There shouldn't be any movement, but there's significant movement. It's a structure that needs a lot of attention.
Anybody have any questions at this point? George?
Jeff, has the engineering firm determined whether, given the fragility of the roof, is it any immediate need to do some exterior framing or supporting of that? I mean, if we have another winter like we had 3 years ago with 120 inches of snow, I'm afraid we may lose that thing.
Yeah, there isn't any immediate plans to do temporary shoring there. Certainly as part of the overall project, there's a need to do some work.
Well, flying buttresses worked at Notre Dame. How about putting a few flying buttresses up there to make sure we don't say, wish we did that? Don't want to put you on the spot, but you're on the spot.
Yeah, so at this point, I know some of the questions that we received were, the Historic Commission being involved in the process, and the answer is as involved as you want to be. We're happy to bring the plans and specifications to the commission at whatever stage you'd like, so you can be involved in that. Although I will say it's a relatively tight time frame to make sure that we have all of our ducks in a row for town meeting and the procurement. So we'll need to move pretty quickly on this. But that is certainly something we can involve the committee. Might need to have some special meetings to make that happen, but we're happy to involve you in all of that so you get the structure that you're looking for.
And understood. I mean, Jack Duggan's the go-to guy. I mean, he's been dealing with this for years. So I don't want to speak for the commission, but I think the commission would be okay with, including Jack, and it can be done desk-wise, but he's pretty intimate. So, and again, I understand, my questions and comments were a bit premature, but I want to make sure that these questions get read into the record and, are on file. So, but that's my thinking, is that Jack would be an important addition at any stage now.
Okay.
If I can add,
Karen?
we also, in addition to Jack, who's on the Historic Commission and the Historic Commission, We do have a very good relationship with the Taylor Bray Farm Preservation Association. I don't know if Don Marie had a chance to send out, it may or may not have been in the original application, but we do have a letter of support from them. And they, stand ready to help as best they can as well.
Okay. Paul, did you have a question?
Well, same question I had on Baxter.
Right.
Ultimately, yeah, and we probably have discussed this. I know we discussed this barn in the past. So there again, what's the ultimate goal? I mean, is it going to be restored to the point where it's a barn that provides storage opportunities for the farm, for the tools and all that, or will people actually utilize it? I mean, where's the benefit to the town? Could somebody explain that?
I can try to take that, Jeff. The barn does serve as storage for the association and other things. There is also some space in the building where there are public functions. The Christmas or the holiday festival comes to mind. The association sells Christmas trees, wreaths, and food things. And they use that center common. I don't know. It's on the front of the building, the largest bay. There's also space in there that serves as an office that is utilized by the association as well.
Yeah. Okay. I mean, don't get me wrong. I think it's a good project. I just think we have to be clear about what the ultimate goal was. So in case we're asked that question.
It's a great question.
I could be wrong, but I think we asked this before, and we asked that coastal engineering, they have to use the design square footage for your worst case scenario, which in my opinion here would be assembly. So it's possible at some point you could have 50 to 100 people in there. That's what they have to design this for, not for paper towel storage. They have to design it with the idea it's possible it could be assembly. And I think they're aware of that, but maybe we should reiterate that to them. Because that's our worst case scenario. They have their Christmas thing, they get a ton of people in there and something happens and it wasn't designed for it. So that
we'll have that discussion with that. That's a good point. I will say that I've been there on a number of occasions during those events, and I get concerned with the number of people in there. Structure right now.
I've worked at them too. Starts raining, everybody tends to congregate inside the barn. Okay, Liz?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of potential for it, Paul. You can think of even educational purposes that kids can do field trips to go there and have a class setting in that environment, or even weddings. So there is a lot of economic benefit to having this restored, not just for historical purposes, but based on that historical purpose aspect of it. Jeff, I didn't see, but you might be able to let me know, is the association wanting to make sure that there is no archaeological things in that basement area? Or are they going to have an opportunity? Like, I want to make sure that we're not digging up stuff and then it just gets thrown away because the foundation is being restored and there are some really major artifacts for our heritage in there. Karen.
Karen, you can respond to that too, but I can briefly, because as you know, Phil Chartier has been doing working with Jack, recovering all the artifacts that we've been down there now. When we just did the building for Tales of Cape Cod, we did the same thing. And Phil came over there and volunteered his time to go through the excavation as we did it. And he did find some stuff. So I think it's a good point that we make sure, and Phil would be the one to talk to, he and Jack make sure when they do any excavation down there, that we make sure no artifacts are destroyed or thrown away. Absolutely. Karen, did you want to say anything on that?
I think George is going to be able to better answer than I.
George?
Yeah, I mean, where this is an historic building and location, we have to submit and get a permit from Mass Historical Commission. So good question, Liz. Yep, we're all over that. And Craig has done a lot of good stuff there. So that's a given that will happen.
Okay, so also, just so you know, Liz, as far as education stuff, it's been discussed. I don't know if we're going to do it, but with the excavation we've done down there before, there's been tons of artifacts found. And we thought maybe at some point, maybe we might display them in this barn. We found some, I'm going to say they're like arrowheads that were like 10,000 years old.
Yep, I was actually an employee when they first started the archaeological digs, and even my husband participated in that. And I worked with the association to have the first display in town hall to promote the project. So this is near and dear to my heart to make sure that that is all preserved, and I do not want to miss this opportunity. So I want to make sure that that's.
Oh, it's a great point, and I think we're all aware of it. So we do not want to destroy any artifacts. We've come this far with it, but I'm sure George and Jack will be right on top of it. Christine?
Yeah, I mean, this is going to be one of the few old barns that's going to be open to the public. We lost an old barn at the top of Center Street where you go up to Gray's Beach. That was torn down by the new owners. There's another old barn on Church Street that's privately owned. That's in such poor condition, and that may very well just fall down one of these days. So it's important to have some of these old structures open to the public so they know the history.
And they've done a great job with the house.
Yeah.
You walk through that, they have all that stuff that's donated as far as furniture. It's great even for educational purposes, as Liz said.
Those arrowheads are older than 1,000 years. Mine is 2,000 to 6,000 years old.
10,000 was the oldest one. Because I got to hold it in my hand, and I tell you, there's something magical about holding that.
Well, when I found the one on my property, that was special.
Okay, any more questions? Jeff?
I think we're good.
Okay. Well, I do want to just mention, I've mentioned this to Karen too, because we talked about it with the church. I do work at Tales of Cape Cod over there in Barnstable, sitting on the other side of the table. We've gotten CPA funding, but I don't know, Liz, maybe you were aware, but we went through Mass Historic. They do have a separate fund for emergency structural repairs. And we were awarded, Karen, you couldn't find it, but we were awarded about $85,000 to redo that floor system. And CPA matched it. So it is out there. You need to put the research in. It goes directly through Bill Gavin. He approves them personally. But there's an emergency repair fund for structural stuff. And the reason we got into it with Tales of Cape Cod, because we were assembly youth. So when you're in a building 200 years old, it's not designed for assembly, which is something like 200 pounds a square foot. So it's a substantial change in the structural component. And Coastal would be aware of it because Coastal did Tales of Cape Cod with us.
Okay, good to know.
Good suggestion, Gary. Thank you.
Anybody else, any questions? If not, we can go on to Higgins Crowell Road. Maybe just you can go ahead and update us where we stand with that. Everybody asked me about it, Jeff, so I'm sure you get asked too.
Yeah, so Higgins Crowell Road, we've been working with Karen to move that through the process. I have not been involved in too many land acquisitions, so having Karen steer me through all the appraisals and how we deal with that has been great. So that's moving through the process. The selectmen, as you're probably well aware, have done a statement of interest, and
So I don't want to cut you off, Jeff, but just be careful if we're going to be talking. If you have to mention any dollar figures, it would be something we'd want to do an executive session, which we're not doing today. So you can continue, just be careful not to mention that.
Okay. Well, we do have a dollar figure associated with this application. But that is only one piece of the pie. I know that I saw some questions from committee members. There is a DEP grant associated with watershed protection. And before I get too far along, I should say that Lori Rosella, our water and wastewater superintendent, is also on the Zoom call here as well. So she could
Yep.
probably supplement, some of this discussion. She's been out at the site. She's worked with the consultant that we're partnering with, and might have be able to answer some of your more specific questions. But just as far as an overview goes, this funding that we're requesting is just one piece of the overall situation to potentially acquire those parcels. There are 10 parcels, and they're you probably saw the map in the application. I don't know if you need to pull that up, Karen, but there are parcels, most of them, the majority of them are within 1,000 feet of the well. So this is an area. Our water master plan has identified that parcels, when they come up for sale within 1,000 feet of a well, we should consider purchasing. And so that's what we're doing. So we're compliant with that water master plan. Yep, that's a good diagram of what's going on out there. So because a majority of them are within that 1,000 feet, that's what we're considering here. And so that's really kind of an overview of the project without getting into any dollars and cents. The town has had an appraisal done, and so we know, kind of the value of those, if you will. And I won't get into that anymore as you've advised me, Mr. Chair. So that's kind of where that stands. Karen, do you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, I'll chime in, and maybe Lori wants to add on. So we've been following the town's land acquisition policy and all the different steps. You have a fair amount of what we consider due diligence in your packets, in the application themselves. Following that due diligence, we've contracted with a consultant to do a phase 1 site assessment. Is that the right way to put it, Lori? And they're almost done with that work. The other thing that is ongoing is town council is still working on the title search. When we have all of that information in hand, we'll work with Bob Lawton that you guys had recommended and generously funded, and Bob will help us through the negotiation process.
So is Bob talking with the owners at all now?
Not yet.
Okay. And when we get all the
Right
information.
now that it's on TV.
Well, when we get all the information, that's when I think we'll be in executive session and put everything together. And I saw the questions too. They're relevant, but I think we need more information because we don't even know what they're asking at this point. We know what they're asking, but I tend to agree with Nate. Hopefully we're not paying that. So. Okay, Lori, do you want to chime in with your comments to this? Yeah, it certainly, as far as what I see personally, it certainly has a huge contribution to our well field. I mean, that's all sand over there. If a housing development went in there, it's going to percolate through that sand rather quickly. Lori?
Right, yeah, that would be exactly what I would indicate. The state requires that we own the 400-foot radius, but particularly down here where we have the sandy aquifer where water moves pretty quickly, it's definitely a benefit to the water department and the town's water users to have more protection on a well. It's 10 lots, so it would definitely be 10 septic systems that won't be contributing to that well if we are able to make this purchase.
Could be more than that if they went to a 40B.
Right, that's true.
It's your worst case scenario. Okay, anybody, any questions of either Jeff or Lori? We'll be discussing this again as we get more information and we get back to Bob Lawton and he negotiates to some point, correct?
The one thing I would add is there are, and I didn't mention it before, there are some water division funds as well as part of the funding equation. So the three pieces would be DEP grant, your funds, of course, and water division funds in this purchase.
Okay.
I would just one add there is, and we can talk as this goes on, but it may be where some of that is a reimbursement, just like Yankee Village, was we may need to appropriate kind of the full amount with the understanding that receipts come back and are
Okay.
going to the appropriate place. And it may be that they go, I'm not sure exactly how it
I could also see this, Karen, being one of those where we actually are mentioning the figure at town meeting floor.
I sure hope so.
But I mean, that's, we have time. We want to get to that point, but we've done that before. We would just be voting to put the placeholder in there without the dollar figure. And maybe we get something done beforehand, but that's happened more often than not. Anybody, any more questions about Higgins Rolls Road at this point? If not, Jeff, I think you've been through enough questions today. Lori, thanks for joining us, and hopefully we're working together and make this happen. So,
That sounds good. Thank you very much.
all right,
Thanks,
thanks. All right. Next, we have the update on the Methodist Church. Who is going to give us that update? Is that you, Don? I think you're muted.
There, now that I'm unmuted. South Yarmouth Methodist Church, we did get a listing of the grants that they had applied for that were denied. The Mass Historic Preservation matching grants for private nonprofit organizations was denied because churches were not allowed to apply. The National Fund for Sacred Spaces worked with the Lilly Endowment and National Trust for Historic Preservation, but they were not successful with that application. And they also approached the Palmer and Jane D. Davenport Foundation for purchase and installation of a handicap elevator, but that was not successful. So we do have those items on record as was requested.
Yes.
Then last week, I went out to the church for the site visit with the Yarmouth Historic Commission, and that was really helpful. And of course, George was there too. And the consensus of the Historic Commission was that they need more detailed information before they will recommend the project.
Okay.
So that letter has gone out to the South Yarmouth Methodist Church. And I'm thinking that it's going to be withdrawn at town meeting for consideration, because my understanding is you don't want to recommend it if it's not got the support of the Historic Commission.
Absolutely not.
Okay. Anything else we need to do? Yeah?
Do that with the vote, Mr. Chairman?
Do we want to vote to withdraw it now?
You could do it, if you'd like to do that, we can provide update to the selectmen and to the applicant that that's how you'll proceed. It's obviously been printed in the warrant. It's up to you. I'm throwing.
Got it. So I guess I'd leave that open to discussion for everybody else. What do all you think? I don't see how they have that information in time. That's a lot, and we need Historic's recommendation on this. I think it's critical. So any comment, George?
Doing the prep for the meeting, and looking at the application and, recollection of our discussions last year, and in the minutes, it mentions that the dollar amount we're looking at is $214,000, and then we had a discussion last meeting that another $8,000 was added to that for $222,000. But going back and looking at the last spreadsheet, and Don, I was able to find one from December 4th of last year, when we voted to table it then, but there was discussions as to whether, and Gary, you brought this up, that you didn't think we should, include money to do the insulation.
Right.
And then, there were other costs. So for a cost, we still had TBD. So if you take out what's in their budget for the insulation, it's like $16,000 or $17,000, which drops the 214 down to what, like 195. So clearly, I was going to discuss this when we talk about minutes, but I think I think there's a little disconnect there as to what the number is.
Yeah, well, we went through it a couple times. Unfortunately, I don't have the calculation with me down here in room C.
The basement.
But, right, we got down to the 203,
I
100.
do.
Thanks, Karen.
I have the figures, George. I think that the 214 number was the original request.
Right.
And then when we went out to the folks that had been tabled from the Springtown meeting to ask if they needed, to have their project considered at this special fall town meeting, they said yes, and we need $8,000 more due to, I think it was transportation and maybe material costs being increased. So that brought the number up to 222,700. And then I didn't have it all handy, but I can tell you. And then the number for the installation of insulation to exterior walls was, I think, 19,006. And that brought us to 203,1. So that was our math.
Okay, which makes a little more sense. However, in our last minutes, we talk about adding 8,000 to 214 to 222,000. So does
Right.
that speak to the fact that we need to modify those minutes? Change those minutes?
I'd have to look at the minutes and see the dates, because I think it wasn't until your last meeting. And I'm trying to look at my calendar. Maybe that was the 21st of October. It was just at the last meeting that you reduced the amount to take out the cost of insulation. So if the minutes aren't kind of right up to date on the last meeting, we'd be looking at a little bit of a lag.
Okay, so
Well, when I look at the minutes from September 10th, the church included a request for an additional $8,000 from $214,700 to $222,700. Right? 214 plus 8.
Yep.
222.
okay, so I see my error. These minutes are for September, so I made a big deal out of nothing.
You're paying close attention.
I think we're also, I don't think the dollar amount is important as much as if Historic's not going to recommend this project, do we want to go forward with it?
But I agree, Gary, that was my mistake. I thought it was the minutes from last month's meeting. So you're absolutely right.
sorry.
So scratch that.
Okay.
And then just to be clear, to make sure everybody is aware of what Historic Commission has requested, it includes detailed elevations and historic documentation exhibiting the original architecture. So
That's going to take time.
and when we were at the site, the people that were representing the church didn't really have any idea of where to look for any historical documentation. So
Could be wrong, but I think these are new people from when we first gave them money, and they don't seem to be familiar with all this because they're new. We worked with the last people, and the minister and everything was great, totally familiar with it, and these people seem to have no idea. But it's not our problem. The way I look at it, I mean, that's them. Karen, do you want?
No, I was just going to say, I'm not sure, and Don Marie and I haven't spent a lot of time together today. So, if we haven't already, we'll send you a copy of that letter that the Historic Commission put together.
It's hard enough to get money for the church, but if we go in there without the recommendation of Historic, it's going to be, my opinion, it's not going to go. So if we actually want to fund this, we should probably, my opinion would be, we keep it, but we withdraw it for this town meeting and let them know, and you can let them know the reason. They need the blessing of the Historic Commission.
And I recall when the Amos Baker House first came up, it was quite a few years ago, right, when they started their project?
Yeah.
And you advised them to kind of go back to the drawing board and tighten up that application and hire a consultant. And obviously it really paid off because the project is looking great and it's nearing completion now. So it's kind of understandable that they would need a little guidance, I think.
George?
Yeah, Gary, and you're absolutely right. The church elder who is doing the grants, he picked it up. They really rely on the builder to answer questions, but the builder is the builder. So clearly they need some backup and assistance in working this out. But their intentions is to preserve it, do a good job. So hopefully this will help them get on track.
Yeah, I don't have any problem with that either, but the way from what I see, I do this for a living. The building's not in imminent danger of getting ruined if we wait on this. And if we go at the wrong time, it's hard enough to get money at town meeting for a church. But if they don't have all their stuff together and it gets turned down, that's the end of it.
Well, and that's why we went out there and to ascertain that. So therefore our letter. So I think your recommendation is a good one. So are we looking for a motion at this stage? Is there any reason why we shouldn't?
I'm going to say I'm looking for a motion.
All right, I make a motion that given the Historical Commission's recent letter asking for additional information on their grant, that we table the application until the next round.
Well, whenever we get that information, but yes, we're not, they
Correct.
don't have to do a new application. They just need to further look into what the historic has asked for, and whenever they have that ready, then we'll vote on it again and bring it forward. So I agree with your motion, George. Do I hear a second?
Second, Paul.
Seconded by Paul. I guess I'll do any discussion on the motion? If not, I'll do a roll call in favor of the motion. Gary, I vote yes. Paul?
Yes.
Christine?
Yes.
George?
Yes.
Liz?
Yes.
Nate?
Yes.
Okay, so it's unanimous. You want to follow this up with a letter to them, letting them know we're not denying it. We just want them to get all their information together, and it behooves them to do it so that when we do get it to town meeting, it has a better chance of passing.
I will do that.
Thank you.
All right. Next, we got an update. What's the update on Sandy Pond?
Well, the update is that the Rec Commission is meeting this evening and Jeff is going to be there. So we'll get an update on this update.
Okay. That's what I thought, but they hadn't talked about it yet. We don't even know if they're in favor of it, correct, Dawn?
Correct.
Right.
I guess it's a divided body, I think,
Yep.
is what I've heard.
At best. All right. Vote to support the amended CPA article. Did everybody see that? It's in their packet. We discussed it last meeting, which was adding the commercial component to the $100,000 exemption. So I guess, Karen, you're looking for us to vote with a motion to accept that?
I just thought it might be nice, you had a separate vote earlier supporting the article as originally proposed. So I thought it'd be nice to be able to say the committee considered and voted on the amended version.
Okay. Has everybody seen the amended version? It's in your packet. If so, if everybody's seen it, I can hear a motion. Somebody?
You want a motion?
Yeah, the motion,
The article is amended?
it would be correct, right, Karen? Yes.
Article number
Yes.
6.
So you're making the motion? Do I hear a second?
Second.
Second by Nate. Do a roll call on the motion. Gary, I vote yes. Paul?
Yes.
Christine?
Aye.
George?
Aye.
Nate?
Aye.
Liz?
Yes.
Okay. Passes unanimously.
Right?
Right. Last, we have, I guess it's staff updates. Anybody have anything they want to do with that? Any staff updates?
Well, I would like you guys to just formally vote to change to a fiscal year annual hearing so that we can schedule that for some time, in January, maybe.
Yeah, we talked about that last week, so I think it makes sense to do that at this point. So
And we don't have to necessarily pick a date today. We just have to vote to
we
change
vote to go
to
to the
the fiscal year
calendar.
format.
Okay, can you hear a
So
motion?
moved.
Motion by Paul?
Nate,
Nate? Don't see you, Nate, that's the problem.
I'm
Second.
undercover today.
Seconded by Christine. Okay, roll call vote. Gary, I vote yes. Paul?
Yes.
Christine?
Aye.
George?
Aye.
Liz?
Yes.
Nate?
Aye.
Okay, next we have the membership and project review. So I don't know if anybody, I've talked with Dan Horgan a number of times. He's great. He's right on. He's the new appointments chair for the selectmen, of course, because he's the new one in. So he's actually going through and checking every committee and who needs to be reappointed when their terms are going out. So have we checked on our end? Karen, I talked with Don about it the other day. We just want to make sure it jives with what he had, because he had 5 members that he said ran out this year.
Yeah, we'll follow up with Pam Barnes, but it's different information than we had. And I thought that we had, I think our only outstanding question, and Nate, I don't know, my heater just came on, so I can't hear. I don't know whether or not you were reappointed. I think the question was Nate's term was at the end of the calendar year with the Community Housing Committee. And this was back around July when we were doing these reappointments. So,
I have no idea.
yeah, we'll follow up. I know, I think.
I told Dan
we were-
he
I think,
was Mary for me, so.
yeah, I think we were holding off because Mary wanted to make sure she did all of the housing ones at one time, just for consistency.
But he had me and Tom on there too, and I thought I just got reappointed like a year ago.
I believe you were reappointed. So
Well, obviously our list is not jiving with what Dan is getting, so.
yeah, I'm not, and I don't know where Dan, what the source of his information was. So we'll find that out and clear it up.
Well, I'm just gonna give him credit for being on top of this. Nobody ever does it, and he's doing it, so.
No,
You communicate
that's
with me
great.
and make sure that everything is done right, because we don't want to have any vote contested. The one person we know who is good here is Liz, because she just got.
Well, I anticipate that Dan is getting this information online
Okay,
because
that
the
could be.
websites are not, the web
Oh, that's a-
pages are very out of date.
That's good intel, Liz.
That's
Thank you.
very old information.
I'm looking at it now.
Even the selectmen are not up to date of the last time I checked. So that is not something, and I agree with Dan that if that is the case, it needs to be, because those are public records that people access, and Yarmouth needs to be protected in that case.
Yep, absolutely right. That's a good point. I bet you that's exactly where he got it from. I didn't ask him. I just told him I'd look into it on our end, which we would do through Pam. So all I can say is Karen or Don, whichever.
Liz's, I'm looking at the website. It's absolutely out of date. So Thank you, Liz.
I'll get to it.
Get on it.
I had to answer,
Top of the list.
had to answer for this like on Sunday afternoon. What? All right. What else do we have? No committee updates. We just have minutes. Is that all that's left on?
That's it. Unless there's anybody who wants to report on what their committee has been up to.
Paul, do you have something?
No, there's just a meeting on Zoom. We'll be meeting again tomorrow, and if anything comes up, I'll let you know.
Good. So the first set of minutes we have is from, I guess it's,
Gary, I have one mention. The community visioning project is moving forward and we have public meetings coming up. And the planning board is actually talking this evening about it, and there is going to be a survey going out as well. So it is going to be touching base on all of our areas that we deal with CPC and helping mold the new vision for moving forward and helping craft the mission for and goals and objectives for the town for the upcoming decade and 2 decades, hopefully. So please make sure that you mention that in your board meetings and pass that word along. And that is being, I think we get emails and stuff too, Karen, is that correct?
We do. I think even if anybody is interested, the meeting, what time's your meeting start tonight, Liz? 5 or 5:30?
5:30.
And it is the visioning workshop kickoff meeting. If you'd like to attend, you can do that. We actually do. I was talking with Kathy this morning. There's a fair number of people registered through Constant Contact for that meeting. But yeah, what we'll do is we will send out an email with a link to the page, the committee, and you can sign up.
I know you sent me one last week, so I got it.
Yeah, and I think the first meeting is the
5th?
10th is the training. I think it's November 18, right before Thanksgiving.
Yeah, this is, I mean, I know that it's done prior to, and Gary, you probably have seen it come past your door a couple of times. However, I think the difference in this year is, and this time is that we have an extremely motivated planning board to make sure that we are going to be as active and engaged as possible, and then utilize this data to craft something. They're extremely motivated, and so just look out, it's coming, and we're going to be like really knocking on everybody's doors. So yeah.
Great, you're doing this because everybody complains about it all the time that there never was any vision, and it certainly makes it easier for this committee. If there is a vision as projects come up, does it enhance that?
Absolutely.
I get asked about, I listened to somebody who talked my ear off for an hour Sunday about this.
We're done complaining.
Right. Jump on board. That's what I tell
A
everybody.
good motto.
All right. Anybody else have anything? If not, I can hear a motion on the minutes from September 10th.
Motion to approve.
George, seconded by anybody?
Second by Nate.
Second by Nate. All right, roll call vote. Gary to accept, yes. Paul?
Yes.
Christine?
Aye.
George?
Aye.
Liz?
Abstain.
You can still, well, doesn't matter, Liz.
Oh, I wasn't a member, so I can't vote. I wasn't a member yet at the time.
I know. I used to go through this all the time when I was on conservation. They go, you can vote even if you're not there. And I believe you can, but if you don't want to, that's fine. Nate?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Next, we have minutes from, it's October 28th, 2020. There a motion on those?
Motion?
Motion to accept, Christine? Second?
Second by Nate.
Seconded by Nate. Okay, roll call vote. Gary, yes. Paul?
Yes.
Christine?
Aye.
George?
Aye.
Liz?
Abstain.
Nate?
Aye.
You know, Karen, this is when I miss, every time we do minutes, I miss Gloria. Right? You would always
I
find
miss
it,
Gloria.
you'd always
regularly.
find a couple of spelling errors. Always.
She was good with a red pen for sure.
Yep. Just like my third grade teacher, she was perfect.
Just
Anyway.
one of her talents.
Oh, she was wonderful. I miss her. So-
I'm sure you saw a lot of those, Gary.
I did. I had plenty of red marks. All right, if not, we can have our favorite motion.
Motion to adjourn?
Yeah, we got to let Nate make this, Christine. That's his. He and Dorcas are always the ones. All right, motion by Nate, seconded. Christine, you seconded. Motion to adjourn. A roll call vote. Gary, yes. Paul,
Yes.
Christine,
Aye.
George,
Aye.
Liz,
Aye.
Nate.
Aye.
All right, thank you all. Good meeting.
Thank
All
you,
right, great.
everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks, Donna Marie. Thanks, Karen.
Take care, everybody.
It's cold in here now, Dawn, because I managed to figure out how to turn that thing off.
And just a quick reminder, there's no meeting next Wednesday because it's Veterans Day.
Woohoo.
Kyle had to go downstairs and get Mark to turn it off.
Ooh.
Crazy. All right.
Yeah, well, I'm pretty chilly down here in the basement too.
Night, everybody.
Bye-bye.